Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 6, Episode 50 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos, which is a very long acronym which stands for a bunch of stuff. We're going to answer questions and respond to comments generally, and we're also going to do a lot of talking, but the important part is the P, which if you are watching this on YouTube, you can check the description for links to listen to this on all the major podcasting platforms, where this is also uploaded. And if you're listening to this on the podcasting platforms, you got here from YouTube, so you already know the drill.
Yeah, and with the P serves a few purposes as an acknowledgement that it's actually possible because of our patrons on Patreon.
Yeah. I wonder, I think it would be literally impossible for anybody to have gotten to the podcast not through YouTube. Because it's not advertised in the RSS feed. Like, how would you find that? I guess you could, search it on, Apple Podcasts or whatever. But yeah. I'd imagine it's impossible anyways. If that day ever comes, I'll be surprised. Okay. Anyways, our first question comes from Guido, G-E-D-O.
Gedo.
There's so many ways you could pronounce
that. Ged, without the O, is the main character in Wizard of Earthsea.
That's true.
One of my favorite books. One of your favorite books, too. From
one of the earliest books that books that I read
as a book that it occurred to you was a real a non-picture book novel.
And when I say read, I mean was read to me.
Okay, all right, so I got a funny little story just because we don't have a lot of questions.
Start with the anecdote.
Well, no, just how I discovered Wizard of Earthsea.
Yeah,
it was grade 6. The student teacher had a sister. We'd gone to Edward's Gardens on a field trip. And the student teacher brought the sister. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how it got on the topic. The sister was recommending Ursula Guin and A Wizard of Earthsea.
Huh. So just a recommendation from a student teacher sister on a trip.
Yeah.
A little bit esoteric.
And, well, no, but I guess it's funny just, I guess the randomness of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Only because Ursula Guin, one of my favorite writers of all time, I think because I read The Dispossessed when I was so young, it sort of shaped me in a way to, and if you've read Wizard of Earthsea, you'd have an idea. It's sort of a utopian dystopian novel, but it makes explicit a lot of political ideas. I mean, anarchy, socialism, all that kind of stuff, and made it seem very real. Mm-hmm. And I remember meeting Ursula Guin at Harbourfront in, I believe it was 94. I mean, if I could go back to Ticket and find it and say, but she recommended to me Philip K. Dick's A Man in the High Castle.
Oh. Which you've watched not too long ago on Amazon Prime.
I'm in the middle of, or I'm at the end of season 3, but it's funny because, she's was super nice, and she was signing books for a whole bunch of people. We were at the end of the line waiting to get stuff signed, and I mentioned not only did I love her stuff, but that she was personally responsible for some of the other writers that I discovered, because I started reading Gene Wolfe and the whole Earth Sun, the Earth Sun series.
Yeah.
Because of her recommendation, one of her blurbs on it, and she said, "Oh, if you like that, if you like my recommendations, you really should read Man in the High Castle."
Huh. Okay.
So I don't know. It's just funny that ghetto is sort of kind of funny name. I mean, maybe it's some sort of misspelling of ghetto,
or it could be a person's actual name.
I guess that could be true, but that it's so close to Ged. And I remember it was, I don't know. It was just really, there's a lot of connections. Anyways.
It's interesting, too. This is not super relevant, but it's one word, right? And a lot of YouTube names now are full names. Just because I think that there was a lot more account names.
Right.
Before it was based off of Google accounts and tied to Google+.
Right.
Right, because the time that they integrated with Google+, that was when you started seeing a ton of accounts that were just people's names.
Oh.
Right?
That's interesting. I didn't realize
And before that, I don't remember seeing nearly as many, because I was, on YouTube off and on, right, for the entire time. And then when Google+ was, force integrated with it, everyone was like, this sucks.
Right.
And then, obviously, Google+ doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
But it's interesting. And I think it's also funny that sort of, in some ways, mirrored my arc of being young enough to not want to put any information up online. Everybody puts so much information online.
It's true.
Now.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there's sort of just an understanding, right? I don't think there's that same sort of nervousness anymore, where there's a huge number of people that just have their full names as their accounts, and they're doing things, right? And it's fully under them. And
I guess they're never getting into politics.
Or, they are, right? If they the thing about it is that if you have an entirely clean online persona, it means there's nothing to find. If you have an online footprint that places you as consistently existing and producing content and just making stuff that's embarrassing and not actually actively problematic, I feel like that's actually
a good thing, like a normal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shows that you're not actually hiding your stuff, right? Or if you are hiding
nothing to hide.
Well, and it's still possible to hide it, right? You can still have like accounts that aren't associated with your name for whatever things that you wouldn't want anybody finding at any point in the future. But I feel like if you have like a TikTok account now, right, and you're posting like just weird, embarrassing like comedy, right, and people find it later, and as long as it's not objectionable enough for anybody to not like you, it's like, oh, so this is them at this age, they're really burying themselves.
So it's an interesting point. I guess the problem I see with that is that as maybe a culture, there's always a cultural shift that's happening, right? Whether it's a little bit of a drift or an actual sudden shift, that it's almost going to be impossible to be good sort of through the eyes of, future you 10 years later, where you look back on it and still think that stuff that was normal at the time is still not problematic.
It depends on the facets of culture that you're engaging with, though, because that's why you can have books from like the 1800s that, I think anything that's big enough obviously has aspects of it, right? And I think the earlier you go back, the really easy thing that I think books would have a hard time avoiding are gender relations, right? Where stuff is, sexist, right? And unaddressed, right? Because it's really hard to have a book with only one, gender of character interacting with it. And that's the only time you get them on the same sort of playing field, right? And I think the stuff that ends up working the best for gender relations is probably stuff that is meant to show that it's problematic in the time, right? Where it's showing behavior that was bad at the time and saying that, we need to do better, right? Like that sort of like almost satire or holding up a mirror to it.
That's not typical. Like I think it's just with the eyes of I'm totally at a loss for words. When you're looking
hindsight?
back at with the benefit of hindsight, that's eyes. With the benefit of hindsight, that very rarely do you ever get something that stays clean.
Yeah, but I think that has to do with the size of it and the way that you're engaging. And so I think that for people posting on social media, for example, it doesn't have to be, political, right? It doesn't have to contain sort of specific facets of culture. It can be almost as sort of narrow as you want it to be. And I think there's definitely a lot of stuff that obviously we are getting better on consistently, right? And that's a great thing. Right? But I think there's also a lot of stuff that is pretty unambiguously all right? When you look at comedians, right? There's parts of comedians' lineups that you could have put, I don't know if they're telling the exact same joke, like 100 years ago, right? And it would have fit in because it's not, engaging with the same facets of politics or culture or things that are shifting, right? In the same way. So I think you can definitely run into stuff where if you're engaging, even if you're talking about progressive politics, right? Where there's a chance that a certain amount down the line, the stuff you're gonna be saying is gonna be already sort of just where we're already at, and if anything, a little outdated. But I think there's a lot of stuff that you can put out there about yourself that is not really tied to anything that is gonna undergo that significant sort of cultural shift in a way that makes what you're saying bad.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah,
you're right.
So anyways, first question. I subbed about 2 years ago, and I no longer play the game. Do you guys have another channel? I'd love to watch you guys play something, but I'm just not into this game anymore. And then the next question comes from Manas Gupta, and they say, guys, please move on to some other game. I like your tips and strategies that you share, but what good is it for a dead game? And then there's a reply to that one by Vyoma Teoma, and they say, Manas Gupta, it's not really a dead game. It has more than 50,000 active players, tons more than Injustice 2.
And I should point out, Vyoma Teoma is actually also known as our most recent Patron. Patron? I always want to say Patron because of the way Patreon, but I think Vyoma Teoma is going to be easier to pronounce correctly than our patron's real name, but we'll get in the credits later.
There's a lot of context for this question.
Right. So here's the thing, right? I mean, it assumes we have any kind of expertise in another game, which is not true.
Yeah.
Because I think if Minecraft has taught us anything, is that there is a limit to the appeal of videos just of the game, just for the sake of watching the game, and that there's maybe like hundreds, if not thousands, of Minecraft channels that don't have a significant viewership, and then a handful that still probably draw a significant audience.
Yeah, because the thing about it is that we can't talk about any other games the way we talk about this. Like, for example, it's not that we're not playing other stuff. Like right now, I'm playing.
Well, I'm not.
You're not really, but right now I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 5.
Okay.
Really enjoying it. The problem is that the stuff that I'm going to say right here about Metal Gear Solid 5 is in common with almost every other game that I'm playing, which is that it's an old game that I'm playing sort of past its best before date for discussion. Right? I think it came out in like 2016 or something.
Oh, wow.
Right? I am playing it, but I'm not great at it. And I'm not doing anything that could be turned into what you would consider interesting content for it. Right? So I don't have great tips or tricks or advice. I'm actually looking up a lot of other people's advice, right?
Right.
To sort of sustain me. I'm, if it was video of the gameplay, you could find that, I'm sure, 100 other places, and I'm sure places that would be much more entertaining than us. And the format of our content, just in a fundamental way, could not be carried over to something that we don't have the ability to talk about with some degree of expertise.
Right. Actually, so when I said I don't play any of the games, that's a bit of a lie. I haven't played many games lately, but I used to play Boggle a lot.
Yeah.
I wonder what appeal there would be for people to watch a Boggle video with commentary.
I don't know.
So, all right, so here's the funny thing. At one point, I took it so seriously that I actually tried to improve. It wasn't just playing.
Yeah.
And I would keep lists. So at the end of the game, if I was playing a version that actually told you what words you'd missed, I would write some of the interesting ones down, because if they were close to some words that I knew, then I'm trying to train myself to think, to make that association, to look for that word and potentially use it. And when you're stringing words together...
Didn't you also memorize almost every three-letter word?
No, not almost. I memorized every three-letter word. There's not a lot of them. And so I could usually clean the board of all the three-letter words, but the bigger ones, sometimes I would be eye blind, right? So I would just look at the board, and there's certain things I wouldn't see until I trained myself. And the best way to actually get better at Boggle at very little cost is to figure out a way to add on to the words that you already see. So that if there's a word that you already see, then knowing all the different sort of related words, where adding another letter in different spots would give you another word. That was actually the easiest way to learn new ones. In fact, at one point, I even took a word list. So there's main dictionaries that are used. Some that are acceptable, some that are not, depending on where you are. And SOWPODS, SOWPODS, I don't remember what it stands for, that acronym, but it's the international one, and there's a North American one. Yeah. So I learned on SOWPODS, and I even took a SOWPODS list of all the words, and I made a list, I made a document of it.
Yeah, and you printed it and bound it.
I printed it and bound it, as it didn't cost a huge amount, but it was
valuable to me.
Yeah, it was like a self-published book, and it was totally worth it, only because if I wanted to look stuff up,
do you still have that?
I do.
Okay, because I remember that. And you designed a cover for it and everything.
I did. It was a very rudimentary cover.
Yeah. But
I took it seriously, and I got really good at it. So the problem now is... So here's the second problem, right? It's not just having something to say about it. I have something to say about it, but I no longer have the expertise. I'm probably about 5 or 6 years away from my prime when I was actually on top of the game. And this is it's not a forgiving game. If you're not right on the top, you're gonna get taken down.
Yeah, I remember you carrying that book around. Like, I remember seeing that book also on the shelf. It had a very prominent space because you would take it out and flip through it.
Well, sure,
pretty regularly.
So part of it is, here's the secret to playing Boggle. You can't be thinking. You have to instinctively recognize these are words. This is a pattern of typing that you should just do that would count, because you get penalized in some Boggle games.
You have to eat, sleep, and breathe Boggle.
So no, but in some games they would penalize you for having the wrong word, and some games wouldn't penalize you, but the cost of writing the word down and taking the time to type it out when you've only got 3 minutes for the whole board, sometimes would be enough to cost you. So the key really is, if you have to think about it and stop and think, is this a word? You've already lost.
And didn't you go to it because of that one game, the word challenge in Webkins? Or was it?
Yeah, it was Webkins.
Yeah,
if anybody's old enough to remember Webkins,
there's a word challenge.
Yes.
And it's a big grid, and it's like tiers that go down.
Yes.
And you can use as many letters from the outside tier and then move on to the inside tier.
But you can't go back out.
But the rule is that you can't go back out. Right. And I don't think you had to connect them by touching. I don't
No,
remember.
I don't remember either, but I remember the tiers and that you ended in the middle.
Yeah, and so you would try to win the daily tournaments
Yes.
on my account,
Yes.
and you would pretty consistently win the daily tournaments because you would find really long words, and you were probably playing against mostly children.
It's true.
Mostly children around my age, which is very young.
And then I progressed and actually started competing against players of my own age.
Yeah. And you still did pretty well. You weren't able to consistently top the leaderboards as much, but
I eventually did. I actually
top 50, right?
No. At one point,
Were you number one?
There was a version in Facebook called
Bogolific, yeah.
Yeah, and then they had to change it to Prolific.
Yeah.
And I was actually number one at one point.
I didn't know you were number one. I knew you had an account and a dummy account in the top 50.
It was not easy.
The other thing that I remember, and we can't say the specific comment because I think that would be able to track you if they could still find the article, but there was somebody who wrote about like all the people in the top 50 because they were in it, and you were ranked both there for both your accounts.
It's true.
And they said something different about each of your accounts for like how the experience of playing against you was.
I did make an effort actually to play differently, and it's hard to. It's surprisingly like when you are. It's like anything else. When you do something so often and you develop a little bit of expertise in it, then the nuances are more apparent. But then being able to sort of express those nuances differently is actually quite hard.
Wait, so you made a specific effort to play differently on 2 different accounts?
Yes. Yeah.
Was this just trying to protect your personal?
No, it was actually
what was
it was practice. It was an attempt to just play differently and not have to worry about losing. So when I'd set up the second account, I was trying to teach myself stuff. So instead of working on just the short words, I'd be trying to look for longer words and play off that, right? And spend more time. And so I would play differently in order to learn something, but I got good enough at it that I was ranking.
That's okay.
But so getting back to the original point, I don't think I'd have lots to say. I just don't think I'd be good enough to be impressive. That there wouldn't be. You'd watch it and you think, so he's just like average. He's
need a Let's Play training montage of you getting back up to peak form.
I just don't know that I could commit the time because I was like at one point I was just playing like I remember when I busted one of my fingers. I actually tore. Yeah, maybe you don't remember this. I had ruptured an extensor tendon on my left hand, so I couldn't touch. It wasn't from Boggle, but I couldn't touch type anymore. So I was using my right hand could touch type, my left hand couldn't. So any words that were on the left side, I couldn't actually manage fast. I'd have to look down and just.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, so.
Sports injuries.
It's true, right? It's sad but true. What was the original question? What I wanted to say about this was that if we're talking dead games, it really depends on how you define it, right? It's probably dead to Warner Brothers because there's not a lot of income to be had, and we're just inferring that based on where it used to rank when you look it up on Google and where it just doesn't rank at all as far as the top money-making apps.
Yeah.
And that even if a lot of people are playing, I think Warner Brothers doesn't care. And probably the best evidence of that is that there hasn't been an update for almost a year now.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best indicator because I'm sure if they had anything resembling new content that would be able to draw new players that would potentially get people to spend more. And clearly, to me, the attempt to try to squeeze a bit more money to justify continued support is changing all the rotating packs that used to be for power credits, and now it's always cash.
Yeah. Okay. And, that actually ties in our next question. They weren't grouped. There's a little bit in between them. But Zachary McHale says, just wanted to let you guys know that you're awesome and that when Injustice sadly but inevitably will die, I still will follow whatever game you guys decide to move on to. I originally came here for Injustice, but I stayed here for you guys. So, that's relevant, right?
That's a nice comment.
So, yeah, same sort of thing. And, hopefully we will do something else at least every once in a while when Injustice no longer makes sense to make content for. That's still the plan.
So the interesting thing, about this comment is the part, let me quote that, undeniably will die. You think that, like, for people at least, death is inevitable. I don't know if it is for games. When Candy Crush dies, then I'll believe it. there's a
when
possibility.
online servers go off, right?
Right,
And I
right.
think that at some point in the future, who knows when, but at some point in the future, it seems likely to happen. And you actually had some...
So I did a little bit of research. So
Yeah.
This is Injustice. The original Injustice comes from a family of games. There's 3 games in that family that were all made by NetherRealms that all had very similar gameplay and mechanics. So we had WWE Mortals. Well, Injustice came first.
Yeah.
There was WWE Mortals and then Mortal Kombat.
And there was another one that was sort of half similar, half not. It was a Batman game, right? Where
Oh,
it
I
had-
never played that.
It had the same basic mechanics, but the idea was it was energy based.
Mm-hmm.
There was different skins, but you could only be Batman. You were fighting a mix of, I think, like random thugs and
Right.
bad guys. So you would be one dude fighting a lineup, like a longer set of guys. I don't remember exactly how many. And there was only the one character. Like, you'd be different skins, but it was only the one character. But mechanically, it was almost the same.
Well, the one thing it was different from the other 3 that I just named was we never actually made videos on that, but we made
Yeah.
videos on all the other 3, like gameplay videos, glitch videos. We did all that, and I gotta tell you, I almost burnt out. Like, that was when we were still doing all 3.
Oh, that
I
was
came
a
close
ton.
to really wanting to
Yeah.
not do it anymore.
Yeah, that's why when that game came out, that's why I was doing the preliminary research on it, right? To see if it was
Yeah.
worthwhile, and it also
Yeah.
just wasn't that great a game.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that the one that's died already out of those 3 is WWE Immortals. And so that research I did today was just to take a look and see what was going on in the store.
Yeah.
So it's not available in the official store anymore, but there is a WWE Immortals listing under books. And what it is just a link. Well, it's a description, but it's a link to a site where you can download a modified APK that has unlimited money and energy.
Yeah.
So what happened with Immortals is that they cut off the server, they let you keep on playing, but then there was no more online content. You couldn't compete in multiplayer. So I guess all the multiplayer rewards were not available. And then eventually they withdrew it from the store.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that Injustice is still available is a good sign. But the idea that it's going to be around forever it's unlikely, because even what would it cost them to keep Immortals in the Play Store as a listing?
Yeah, it seems like not a lot. It seems we were talking about it just for a second before we started recording, and it seemed to me like the only reason it would be taken down, because you can leave a game up that has had no updates for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Is if there's something internal that I didn't understand. But if it was an active decision to take it down, it would seem like it would be the licensing for one or more of the characters needing to be renewed, right? Some sort of active upkeep, just because it's real people, right? Their likenesses.
Right. And my point then, and I'll just state it again now, because clearly nobody was listening in on it. Well, maybe Google was listening in on us. That the...
Hey, Google, how you doing?
Awesome. Thanks. How can I help?
So, what was the point I was going to make? It seems more likely that it would be WWE that would be pulling their license, because they've got other competing games. So maybe that would save Injustice, only because Warner Brothers owns DC.
Mm-hmm.
And there wouldn't be a need. They could just leave it on, even if it was drawing nothing. If they didn't have to make any updates, it didn't cost them anything. If they just stopped the servers, that's the main cost. After that, they could just leave it up indefinitely, but I don't know how much value there'd be in just being able to download it indefinitely.
Especially,
without
without
any updates.
online.
Yeah.
This is something sort of separate but related. When I was younger, I used to play a lot of free Flash games, right? Because that's what you do when you don't have disposable income, but you want to play games.
Right.
And so...
Oh, Viking Defense, I love that. That was a Flash game, right?
Yeah, that was on Miniclip. Yeah, so there's different sites, and a lot of games would be cross-posted to different sites, right? It would be built in, and the way that they would incentivize you using the original site, right? And I guess watching ads on it. I don't know exactly how monetization worked, right? That was not something that I was at all interested in at that age. I didn't care. But is they would have unique content only on that site. So Armor Games, for example, a game that I really like, Sunny, one of the classes for Sunny 2, you could only play on Armor Games.
Oh, okay.
And there was another game that I liked quite a bit. I'm getting around to tying it back, which was, I don't even know if there's a word for what this game was. It was called Mike Shadow. I paid for it, and it was really just, it was a game about pure grinding, where you would literally just spend money to upgrade your energy and like your rage meter, and then you would use attacks that cost energy to build up your rage meter, and then use attacks that spent rage, and you're just beating up a vending machine that could never be broken, so you could beat it up infinitely, and
it would stuff come out the bottom that you didn't have to pay for then?
no, you would just get money from it based off of how hard you beat it up. And so it was just slowly grinding, where you start out with just punches and kicks, and then at the end you're like summoning like lava serpents and like destroying it with your tsunami.
All right,
and,
so was your collection just your better abilities?
You would get more energy. So for, let's say at the start you have like, for example, 50 energy, right? And a kick costs 5 and 10. And everything's on a cooldown, right? So a kick costs like 10, and then you have like 3 seconds, and you have a bar of like 9 abilities, right? And so the more money you got and the more rage you got, like the bigger bars you got for those, right? Basically, you could use stronger attacks, which would get you more money. They would last like shorter or longer, so you could set up combos more efficiently, right? And then, having a bigger rage bar means that you could, for example, combo 2 attacks that use less of your rage, right, to consume that meter, or use 1 attack that did way more damage, right?
So it was, am I missing something? So you're just getting better at doing things in this game.
Yeah.
But
it's almost entirely grind focused. It's really just a grinding game.
But it's all self-referential, right? Like, it's all... There's no...
It's almost like an idle game, where the point is to just see the numbers get bigger. Right?
Okay.
Except it's non-idle. All of it was active. And so the point is that this was... I don't normally know what sites games are from, but I think I played it off of Congregate initially, and Moshi Games was the site that had initially hosted it. I don't know if they owned it or whatever that arrangement was. And I know that because there's a tab of like prestige purchases that you could only get off of the Moshi Games site if you played it off Moshi Games. And you could set up a really sort of ridiculously long combos, like a sort of 4-minute game, because there was stuff that let you get like energy back and like a ton of just an absolute like huge amount of different things that you could chain together. And I was really disappointed because it was a game that I actually beat a couple times, where I'd come back to it every once in a while. One time around Christmas with a friend, we both started up at the same time and saw who could get to like whatever milestone first.
Right.
And then Moshi Game shut down. And so all of a sudden there was a Flash game that existed on a bunch of different platforms that had an entire page of upgrades that was locked off from it because Moshi Games, the site that you were supposed to visit to get that, right? And played on this site and then you'll get everything, no longer existed.
Wow.
And so that to me is reminiscent of when a game's multiplayer goes offline, right? And you can only play with the offline content. All of a sudden there's all this content that's already there. All the work has already been put into it, right? But because they're not supporting it properly anymore, you all of a sudden lose the ability to use it. Yeah, it's crippled.
Yeah.
And soon enough, Flash games are going to go the way of WWE Immortals anyways, right? Because Flash is being phased out, supported less and less, I think.
I mean, I think Apple was the first one to say no Flash.
Yeah, and you can still, enable it in Chrome, but I remember a while ago I was reading articles about how, like, eventually, because it's a security risk, right?
Right.
People are going to stop using Flash.
How many years ago was that?
I don't remember.
We're talking, this is the known vulnerability for at least 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah, so anyways, Flash is dying. There's going to reach a point where nobody's using Flash anymore. And there was a bunch of discussion that I remember looking at where people were saying, oh, but all those sort of early 2000s Congregate animations and all those Flash games, right? That was like a part of like youth culture at that point. Yeah. And I think it was sort of expected that stuff would be there, right, to return to.
Right.
So,
speaking of, stuff to return to, I still have a floppy disk drive, self-contained, that connects to a USB port. Just because, I mean, you think of all the things that have become obsolete.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of value to be in being able to access it. Otherwise, all that information, whatever that is, that hasn't been transferred over, is completely lost.
You also had, for a long time, you probably still have it, I can't imagine you got rid of it, a tape deck to aux cord converter for your, like, was it a 97 Toyota Corolla?
Oh, yeah. So it's one of those things that you pop into the tape deck so that you can use it as, create basically an aux input.
What year did you sell that car?
All right, so it was a 98 Toyota Corolla.
Oh, 98, okay, not 97.
It was 98, because it has that, I just remember it, and we got rid of it in 2000 and... I want to say 13.
I was going to say 2014.
Yeah, it's probably right. Sometime around there, because we were driving out to Montreal to the
It was at least 15 years old.
Farthing Party convention. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. So it's Farthing Party convention. It's still running fine. It was just that...
I just remember that it was like one of the last cars that I knew of that anybody owned that still had a tape deck and no aux.
And it had manual windows, which I actually miss.
I don't.
Because electronics are the first thing to fail in cars, right? So that if you have problems, then you can't open or close your windows unless the car's on.
Yeah.
And all the electronics, all the wiring is still good. Anyways, we still have a question. I thought we would run out of questions, but we still actually have a question.
Yeah, so there we go. Our next question comes from the Big Fish, and they say, I missed the online battle skip so bad.
So can I give context?
Yeah.
So the online skip battle was a glitch that we never really endorsed. We knew of it. We knew how to do it. We didn't push it because we used to think... Well, maybe we'll do the follow-up, but just to give you context.
There was an equivalent for single player, right? And we said don't use this for online battles, basically.
Right, because it makes everybody else's experience a little bit crappy when you do that to basically motor through and play faster than anybody could in real life.
Yeah, we said it works, but don't do it.
Yeah.
And then the next comment from the Big Fish says, LMAO, I just came back after a year and my maxed account got banned for doing the online battle skip so many times. Now my best cards are Silver Wonder Woman and the Flash Regime. 2 silver cards, Lamau, it hurts.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea of the morality play in 2 parts. And it's the 2 things, right? Like there's 2 things that we've sort of avoided. And we haven't talked about this in a long time. The distinction between cheating,
I feel like we have
glitches and hacks.
I feel like we've
recently,
talked about it. I don't know how recently, but not too long ago.
It feels all right. So
glitching is something that does not require any external software. It doesn't require anything extra outside the game. It is just using.
I think we defined it. I think we just didn't talk so much about the reasons why it made a difference. To us.
Yeah. So it's just using the way that the game works, and to your advantage is when you're glitching in terms of exploiting, and hacking is bringing in external software or external... Well, it has to be software. There's got to be something else, right? Some other way of...
basically working
with the game. Yeah. Yeah, and so the reason why we feel like there's a difference, and, you know, even with some glitches, why we don't condone certain glitches, is because our general philosophy is it's fine if it's not hurting anybody else. And so the idea with a lot of glitches is that everybody is on the same sort of playing field.
Right.
And giving somebody better account stuff is pretty much equivalent to somebody having more money, right, to spend on the game.
Or playing longer.
In almost every case. And so you're not actually making anybody else's experience more negative because there's no way to, you know, ascertain if somebody just played a lot or if they're using a glitch. And that's also why, for both safety and for glitch purposes, when there was an online multiplayer reward, right? We told people to not bring anything in on any level sort of above what they should naturally have been able to get if they were in the top 5%.
Well, it's still relevant now, like Valorium Alloy, for example,
right?
Yeah. Like we've been keeping track of how much Valorium Alloy should have been legitimately available.
Yeah, and we've always said that just so...
So this illustrates both points perfectly, right? So we've recommended against doing this in multiplayer because it makes everybody else's experience worse, but also because there was a risk of suspension. And that sometimes the risk isn't as obvious, so that when you're doing it, at the moment, it maybe seems okay.
Yeah.
Because the suspension actually happens a little bit later, and you don't even realize that you're a dead man walking already, and it's just a matter of time till the end of the season before somebody does something or somebody decides to do something to you.
Yeah, and so for us, you know, the risk of suspension was not really it. It was just the making an issue for other players. So basically, the problem is that anybody who doesn't know about the glitch and who isn't exploiting it is at a disadvantage against anybody who does know about the glitch and is exploiting it. Right?
And the amount of expertise for a glitch is not huge. It's just really being careful and being aware of the steps that you need to do to reproduce it.
Yeah, and that sort of sucks because there's always going to be a subset of the population. Like, we never, you know... thought we were never under the impression that everybody who was playing Injustice was watching our channel, right? Or everybody who's playing Injustice has access to all this stuff. And we figured it would be really sort of frustrating if there's a bunch of people doing what were impossible feats, right?
Right.
Under normal gameplay, and somebody just coming in and being like, "Oh, this sucks." There's no way, right? There's nothing to aspire towards. They just know I can't do this, right? And
Right.
sort of
Right.
being more frustrated than they needed to be,
Right.
Getting a top 20% instead of top 10% or whatever because everybody else was glitching.
Yeah. No, I think that captures it perfectly, because it might seem a little bit pretentious to say it, but I think we really did believe that we were helping people when we were starting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just informing people. I think more information is never bad for
That's right.
most of this stuff,
That's right.
especially if it's as complete as you, to your knowledge,
Right.
can make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Alex Caxo, Kacso. Not sure how that's pronounced. Let us know in the comments if you want. And they say, "Great content, guys. I would like to ask for some help with a bug that happened to me. So, out of nowhere, I got locked out of play mode in Survivor, and it said I had to play tutorial first to unlock them. Weird, as before this bug, I was on Battle 50, the one after bonus battle 7. So I played the tutorial, Survivor got unlocked, and all my previously completed battles are back with a green tick, except for battles 1 to 6, aka the first page of battles, excluding the bonus battle 1, which are locked with a padlock icon, and I can't access them. So the tutorial and bonus battle 1, as well as all of their previously completed battles, have a green tick, while battles 1 to 6 have a padlock. My roster and my gears were unaffected. I tried clearing cache and restarting game, logging in and out of Google Play account and WBID account, completing the tutorial again, as well as bonus battle 1. If anyone has any idea, I would greatly appreciate it."
Okay, so the good news is that you've still got stuff unlocked, because I've seen a version of this bug where everything is locked except for the first battle, the
Yeah.
tutorial one, bonus battle 1, and everything else before and after.
Yeah.
So that is actually harder, because then it limits your ability to grind for credits and for experience.
Yeah, and the other good news is that the stuff that's locked off is not actually particularly
not
necessary.
So here's the
It's
funny
maybe
thing,
just
yeah.
a little visually annoying.
I've read that there's a solution, and that what you need to do is somehow play all the unlocked games, fights, in order, winning all of them, and then somehow that'll unlock it. And to me, it feels almost like a bit of a troll, because the time it would take to do that would be days, and there's no guarantee that it works, and I don't have any reassurance that it's something useful. And the value of doing that when there's so many other things to do, like Survivor and Breakthrough and multiplayer, that once
Or
you-
even just living your life, like reading a book.
I guess so.
Not to be that guy. I mean, but like going for a walk maybe.
So it seems like it's too complicated a solution to really test it out. You know, to find an account that's locked like that, and then test it out, and then know that you've done it in order and cleanly enough. And especially since there's one battle that's still screwed up, right? Battle 62.
Yeah.
To know that you're going to be able to do it properly and convincingly say at the end, yeah, it did work, or no, it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
For something that has, like you said, limited value.
Mm-hmm.
Since it's not important enough, those fights aren't, there's nothing necessary about
Yeah,
them.
so that's how you might do it. We've heard you can do with that information what you will, but it doesn't seem like it's worth it to us, and we can't actually confirm that, right? Because again, that's one of the things about glitches, right? Is that we can't confirm anything that we have not been able to test firsthand ourselves, and usually for stuff, not just do once, right, but to reliably replicate. So I don't know what our cutoff was when we were testing it, but just enough times that it felt right. Especially because in the learning phase, a lot of times you end up screwing up a little bit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work, but when we get the steps down, when it works pretty consistently.
Yeah, I do want to point out too, at least for this this problem, it's part of the save of your account, so it's built in. So no amount of uninstalling and reinstalling, logging in and out of your account will work. Really, the only thing that works is starting up a new game, like a new account, a brand new WBID.
Which is not worth it.
Yeah. Or I guess if there's a possibility you could find a hacker that has some expertise to fix it, but we haven't seen any solutions to it yet. Though we haven't confirmed any solutions to it yet.
Yeah. Excuse me.
So we've got a couple minutes. I actually had planned, especially with the way people have been asked about what else we could do and stuff. I've been thinking more along lines of just over the week, keeping track of things that I'd learned this week.
Yeah, and then just having some talking points.
Well, okay.
Yeah, but we ended up spending a lot of our time because we rambled about tons of stuff as we normally do.
Yeah.
You underestimated our ability to talk about totally unrelated things.
Okay. I want to talk about something cool that took me. I was this week's year old. You know that the way people say it. I learned just this week.
I was today years old.
But it wasn't today. I learned it a couple days ago. That rulers. All right. So plastic rulers have a bevel on the edge. Bevel up. Use a pencil for the straight edge.
So that you can like angle it out so that it's pressing in directly on the edge. As close to the edge as possible.
So bevel is the part that's
the notch.
The notch, yeah.
Yeah, so bevel facing up, so the flush with the paper touching.
Yes. But if you're using a pen or anything that might potentially smear, bevel down.
I didn't know that.
Again, maybe your edge won't be as smooth if you slide your pen at a different angle, but it also means that your line will be way cleaner.
Is that like built in? Is that supposed to be inherently, or is that just how people are using it?
I don't know. I saw somebody had uploaded onto Twitter. Twitter, you told me it's not at all for olds. I'm not entirely convinced. You said it was for just everybody. But I saw somebody had posted an image of instructions on a Japanese ruler that actually demonstrated this, that actually had pictograms showing this is how you're doing it with a pencil, this is how you're doing it with a marker, and that you're supposed to use the metal edge for something else. They actually have a third edge on the back end that's metal, and I'd imagine that would be good for when you use
a third edge. I don't understand the.
So the back. So there's one edge that you flip back and forth, and then the other side is metal.
Oh, on the other side. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The numeracy of that was confusing to me. I'm like, is this like a Toblerone shaped ruler?
And I had a ton of other stuff that I wanted to go over, but I guess we're out of time now. So maybe we'll just save that for next week.
Okay. More content for us. All right. So to finish up here, first off, a shout out to Eliza. My last name is very Yiddish, Cheten. I almost certainly pronounced that wrong, but who knows? This shout out has been brought to you by the sound waves hitting your eardrums a couple of seconds ago.
Okay.
Also, a huge thank you to Console Peasant and Edwoon, who are supporting us at the highest last word tier. Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, and Michael DeVries, who are supporting us on the credited tier, and Chris Wolf at the gratitude tier. Thank you also so much to all of you for watching or listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Komoda.